नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। यस्वानुभावम् अखिलश्रुतिसारमेकम् अध्यात्मदीपम् अतितितीर्षतां तमोऽन्तम् संसारिणां करुणयाः पुराणगुह्यं तं व्याससूनुम् उपयामि गुरुं मुनीनाम्। मेनिरे भगवद्रूपं शास्त्रं भागवतं कलौ पठनात् श्रवणात् सद्यो वैकुंठ फलदायकम्। श्रीमद्भागवत नाम पुराणं लोकविश्रुतं शृणुयात् श्रद्धया युक्तः मम संतोष कारणम्. We are about to begin Dvitiya Skanda of Srimad Bhagavatam. Towards the end of Prathama Skanda, the first canto of Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj had a series of questions for Shuka. The glorious conversation between Sukha and Parikshit has begun. Parikshit's questions revolved around one primary question. What is my ultimate duty? What is the ultimate duty of every person? And more specifically, what is the ultimate duty considering the short span of life? Parikshit knows that he has only 7 more days to go. So he wants total clarity on his dharma, more so in this short span of time. Parikshit also asks Sukha on what should be heard, what should be chanted, what should be contemplated upon. In response to Parikshit's questions, in Dvitiya Skanda, Shuka begins his glorious exposition. Shuka begins dwelling on what shouldn't be chanted, what shouldn't be heard, what shouldn't be contemplated on. He begins to answer Parikshit's question on what should be contemplated on by responding with an answer which covers what should not be contemplated on. More so when one is nearing his last moments of his life. So therefore, the way Sukha begins his response is quite interesting. Sukha starts telling Parikshit, the last moments on this planet, hey Parikshit, are essentially governed by the way you have conducted yourself throughout your life. Therefore, what should be not contemplated upon, what should not become the core of one's life and living, Parikshit's attention is immediately arrested. Sukha declares, Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrasaha Apashyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedhinam. Sukha comes up with an interesting phrase, Grihamedhinam. Grihamedhis, he says. We all have heard of Grihasthas. Who are Grihamedhis? Sukha says, Shrotavyadini Rajendra Nrinam Santi Sahasrasaha. To the Grihamedhis, there are hundreds and hundreds of things that they need to hear about, that they need to contemplate on. Apashyatam Atma Tattvam. The ones who are completely unaware of Atma Tattva. These Grihamedis are unaware totally of Atma Tattva, which essentially means they have too many goals to chase. Their goalposts keep moving all the time, and therefore they have too many things to deal with in life, and therefore too many things to hear. Grihamedis are those who are materially engrossed. Grihasthas are those who are also in worldly life, but they have spiritual aspirations. Anyone who follows the ashrama dharma goes through the worldly life with spiritual aspirations. After all, we all need to live in this world. We cannot be cut away and we cannot escape this material world. We'll have to live in this world, and it is through this world that we need to eventually seek liberation. So ashrama dharma becomes vital. Every ashrama is a vehicle for spiritual progress. A grihastha, a householder, uses the ashrama, grihastha ashrama, as a vehicle for spiritual progress. He leads a worldly life with spiritual aspirations, whereas a Grihamedi is materially engrossed. This Grihamedi has hundreds of things to hear, Shukha says. What are these hundreds of things? No, our loudest desires won't lead us to any happiness. We need to understand this. It is our deepest desire that leads to our happiness. Grihamedis get carried away listening to the loudest desires in their mind. If we really watch carefully our own minds, there is a constant conversation that is happening within the mind all the time. Our desires in the mind are all conversing all the time. That's the chatter that is taking place in the mind all the time. Hundreds and hundreds of desires having conversation with each other. Some are muted, some are loud, some are very loud, some are yelling and screaming. Most often, those desires which are yelling and screaming are those desires wanting fulfillment of bodily pleasures, because they are aided and abetted by external stimuli coming from the world. Grihamedis are those who end up listening only to these loud desires, to these screams. Unfortunately, deep within the mind lie our deepest desires, which are what really matter. What are our deepest desires? All of us have these deep desires. But unfortunately, in the din of all this clamor, all this noise that is happening in the mind, we don't get to hear them. They end up being muted. These deep desires are the urge to know who we truly are. What is our purpose in life? But most often, we don't get to hear these desires. They get lost completely. The Grihamedis are those who end up listening to the loudest desires and get carried away, get materially engrossed. Shukha says, first and foremost, a parikshit, before knowing what you must hear, you must know what you must not hear. If you look within your mind, there are so many desires which are asking for your attention. First and foremost, mute them. Forcefully mute them. If you keep listening to them, you cannot listen to anything worthwhile. Even this Bhagavatam Katha, hey Parikshit, that I am going to share with you, if you do not mute your loud desires in the mind, you will not be able to enjoy the Krishna Rasa. So therefore, first and foremost, you must mute the loudest desires in the mind. Stop being materially engrossed. Apashyatam Atma Tattva. Only when one is not aware of the Atma Tattva, when one thinks I am the body, they become Grihamedi. The more we live for the world, the more we live for the world, the more we go away and away from the world maker. The more we just focus on this external world and what we can get done with this external world, the more and more we keep going away from the world maker. Sukha says, first know that more than the world maker, Krishna should become your priority. If that doesn't happen, it is very, very difficult for a Grihamedi to transform into a Grihastha. The beauty of our Shastras is, for moksha sadhana, for the sake of moksha, Shastras do not say one needs to necessarily become a sannyasi. It is not necessary that a brahmachari, after becoming a grihastha, must necessarily become a sannyasi. One can remain in grihastha and still seek moksha. It is only important that one should not slide and move down from being a grihastha to a grihamedi. So therefore, Shukha starts off by warning Parikshit. By warning Parikshit, saying, you must understand that all the goals that one sets in this world are not one's goals. These are world's goals. We end up trying to fulfill goals set by the world. If we really notice, whatever we think are our goals in life, if we list all of them beautifully on a piece of paper, no, I just urge you to do this exercise. It would turn out to be very interesting. I can guarantee you that. List all kinds of goals, not in any order, any priority. And when you start analyzing them, they are all goals which are dictated by the external world. So we end up leading our lives, shaping our life and lifestyles in order to fulfill goals which are set by the world, not by us. So Shukha starts clearly with this message to Parikshit, because Parikshit also has only a very short time span. And 7 days may seem to be short, but even 100 years is also short. We may all think Parikshit possibly is in a hurry. He only has 7 days. We all have enough time. Our time will come. Possibly we will also look at the 7 days of our own last 7 days of our lives, but who knows what the last 7 days are. But in reality, even 100 years are not really enough. So therefore, in a way, Shukha is saying, consider whatever number of years you have in your life as only 7 days. And then start planning accordingly. Dehapatya kalatradishu atma sainyeshu asatsvapi. So Shukha, no. Till now, we have been only listening indirectly to Shukha. Shukha's words conveyed indirectly. Now he's listening to Shukha's words. Shukhamukhat amritadrava samyatam. Every word Shukha speaks is amrita. These are direct Shukha's words to Parikshit. Very, very profound. Shukha Brahma is celebrated as the greatest of rishis at a young age. Even he's put on a pedestal even higher than his own father, Vyasa. as we have seen earlier in Bhagavata Mahatmya. Dehapatya kalatradishu atma sainyeshu. Shukha uses the word atma sainyeshu. What is atma sainya? Soldiers, one's own soldiers, he says. Asatsvapi tesham pramattah nidhanam pashyanyapi na pashyati. He is now continuing to talk about the Grihamedis only. He says, Dehapatya kalatradishu atma sainyeshu asatsvapi. Atma sainyeshu. These are soldiers, Sainya, one's own soldiers. What are one's soldiers? All possessions that one has. Both animate and inanimate. All kinds of relationships, possessions. These are what one is attached to. Atma sainyeshu asatsvapi. Dehapatya kaladrishu. Without really understanding the Atma Tattva, these Grihamedis are so very attached to their own possessions. What they think they possess, they don't really possess. They are possessed by their possessions. And their attachment is so strong that tesham pramattaha nidhanam pashyannapi na pashyati. They can see very much destruction happening. Even with their own mundane eyes, they can actually see destruction happening. But unfortunately, even though they see, they ignore what they see. Pashyannapi na pashyati. Body is aging every day, but the Grihamedis conveniently or inconveniently ignore. Want to be young and youthful ever, forever, forever. 21, possibly one wants to stay for more, maybe for 50 years. Until it really shows up and you cannot hide anymore. Until then, possibly a little bit amount of makeup can help, but at some point in time, nothing will help. But the problem here is seeing and ignoring. You know, this is unfortunately the way we choose how we define ourselves. Our own self-definition. You know, each of us, how do we define ourselves? If we ask this question, our own self-definition is a result of our images that we see in the social mirrors. This is how we define ourselves. It is the social mirror that is shown to us, which defines who we are. Our self-definition, unfortunately, is not eternal. It is explosive, it is volatile. It is not factual, it is flawed. Why I say it is volatile? When I am defined by what I own, what I possess, then it's definitely volatile because material fortunes keep fluctuating. Therefore, my self-definition keeps dramatically changing, sometimes traumatically changing as well. Therefore, what has to be eternal becomes explosive. What has to be factual and firm, because I am changeless, I'm eternally blissful. This is my eternal definition. But what is factual and firm becomes flawed because my self-definition based on my image, my reflection on the social mirror, thus this world shows me, does not reflect my true essence. I get defined by my bank account, my title in my office, the car I drive, the house I live, what I kind of show off. These, unfortunately, all of this do not really matter. Imagine for Parikshit, he was the emperor of the world. How does it matter to him the last 7 days of his life? all the definitions that the world bring in based on which we conceive of who we are volatile, explosive, flawed, fallible. Shuka says one needs to have a self-definition which is eternal. That comes with awareness of the Atma Tattva. That has to be firm. That has to be factual. Knowing my relationship, who I am and my relationship with Krishna. The never changing. This relationship can never change. Is never subject to any changes, come what may. And when that self-definition happens, that is when a Grihamedhi Parikshit can actually claim to be a Grihastha. One needs to know one's authentic self. And therefore, Shuka says, Parikshit, you are a mumukshu. You are very keen. You are desirous for moksha. Let me tell you, who are those who deserve freedom from all miseries? Who are those? He says, those who truly deserve freedom from all miseries are those who desire knowing, singing, thinking, contemplating, glorifying Bhagavan and only Bhagavan. When I desire Krishna, I deserve total freedom from miseries. Shuka says, Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavyah Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Icchatha Bhayam. Again, this reflects on Shuka being a great Vedantin. Vedanta gives a simple formula. Simple but very profound. How do I realize Krishna? How do I see him? Vedanta has a simple answer. Shrotavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasitavya, Trashtavya. Here, Shuka is giving the same message. Shrotavya, Kirtitavyascha, Smartavyascha, Icchatha Bhayam. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. Realize that Krishna, the Paramatma, Bhagavan, Ishvara, he is the controller. He is the Hari. He is the one who can completely dispel all the darkness of Papa Karmas. And therefore, as long as you are the servant of the world, you are the slave of your miseries. The moment you realize that you are not servant of the world, you are Krishna's servant, that's when you enjoy real freedom from miseries. So therefore, the answer to how and when will I deserve total freedom from miseries is when you truly desire Krishna and Krishna alone, he says. And Shuka says, Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Swadharma Parinishtaya Janma Lava Parah Pumsan Ante Narayana Smritihi. He gives the crux of the whole of Gita in this one shloka. He says, what is the primary purpose of practicing Jnana Yoga? What is the primary purpose of practicing Karma Yoga? What is the primary purpose of practicing Bhakti Yoga? What is the primary purpose? He says, Ante Narayana Smritihi. Yamunacharya, summarizing Gita, comes up with a profound shloka. He says, Swadharma Jnana Vairagya Sadhya Bhakteka Gocharaha Narayana Param Brahma Gita Shastre Samiritaha. Discovery of Narayana is the highest perfection, is the fulfillment of one's life. Therefore, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, all the yoga sadhanas that are performed is for achieving that highest perfection of life. Shuka says, Prayena Munayo Rajan Nivritta Nivritta vitti chedataha nairgunyasta ramante sma gunanukante hari hare, he says. All kinds of rishis, all kinds of yogis, all kinds of sages, they all spend their entire lifetimes practicing various yoga sadhanas only for one purpose, to reach that state where there can be unalloyed, constant contemplation on Narayana. Tailadharavat avichinna smriti sandhana. Tailadharavat avichinna smriti. Like when oil is poured, it flows smoothly without any disruption, very smoothly. That contemplation on Bhagavan Hari has to be such a smooth flow. And that is the perfection, highest perfection. All the sadhanas are for that. Every sadhana, every yoga sadhana is to empower us, to enable us to align with the laws of the universe. Align with the laws of the universe, which means fall in line with the laws of the universe. Yes, it is important to fall in line with the laws of the universe, but it is more important to fall in love with the lawgiver. Falling in line with the laws of the universe is only the process, but the objective is just not to stay there. The objective is to fall in love with Krishna, the lawgiver. That is the highest perfection of life, Shukha says. And he says, hey, Parikshit, let me give. I'm talking about all the yogis, siddhas, rishis. Let me give you my own example. Until I was fortunate to hear Bhagavatam from my own father, Vyasa, I did not feel fulfillment of my own life. It is thanks to my own father bestowing me with this treasury of Bhagavata. By listening to Krishna's glories, now I can say that my life's mission is fulfilled. So therefore, it is listening to his glories, constantly contemplating on him is the very essence. That's the highest perfection. And therefore, no Parikshit, that immediately Parikshit has a concern. And then what is the success mantra then? What is the success mantra in life? Parikshit asks this question. Sukha gives a beautiful answer. Etan nirvidyamananam ichchatam akutho bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam hare namanukirtanam. What is the success mantra is the question. Shuka's answer is mantra. What is the success mantra? Mantra. Bhagavan's nama is the Taraka mantra. What else does one need? His nama may sound very simple, very easily accessible, but his nama many a times is more powerful than Bhagavan himself. Mantaram trayate iti mantra. It is the cure-all for all ills of samsara. So therefore, Shukha says, what is the success mantra? Mantra is a success mantra. Yoginam nripanirnitam hare namanukirtanam. One needs to engage constantly for moksha sadhana, engage in nama sankirtana, engage in chanting Krishna's glories all the time, constantly listening to his glories, constantly contemplating on them, constantly singing. Now, Parikshit says, to reach that highest perfection, state of perfection, it looks like I still don't have time. I only have 7 days. What do I do? Parikshit says. Shuka says, you will have your Katvanga moment. What is this Katvanga moment that Shuka is referring to? Katvanga was another great Raja, a great Jnani, a great Bhakta who engaged in supporting all the Devatas in their war against the Daityas. And after securing the win, the Devatas were all elated and they were thanking Katwanga. Matter of fact, Katwanga asked the Devas, maybe if at all you can do me a favor, you can tell me this one thing. How much more time I have to live? Not an easy question to ask. It takes immense courage for somebody to ask and know this. Obviously, Katwanga is a Mahapurusha. So he was courageous enough to ask the Devas, how long do I have on this planet? Not to his shock, possibly to our shock, back comes the reply, one muhurta. One muhurta of a day, not one full day, just one muhurta. But Katwanga was not shocked. Katwanga said, I have one muhurta? There is a different way of saying this, right? One muhurta sounds a lot of time. He said, one muhurta is more than enough. Immediately, Katwanga engages in contemplation, takes shelter of Bhagavan Hari and constantly contemplating on him achieves moksha. He reaches that supreme state. So Sukha says, Katwanga had only one muhurta, hey Parikshit. You have 7 full days. Why are you even bothered? You should be looking at 7 full days is more than enough. Therefore, you should cheer up because Parikshit was also a little worried. Sukha gives him all the confidence. And he says, you have 7 more days to go. Therefore, there is enough time for you, hey Parikshit. So this is also a great reassurance for everyone in general. There is enough time wherever we are, in whatever state we are, there is definitely scope to reform and transform. And Sukha therefore says, Parikshit, this is the reason why possibly I have been sent here. There is a purpose for this divine coincidence of me walking and then encountering you happening. And therefore, let us make use of this opportunity. Because Sukha obviously loves talking, not general talk, talking about Bhagavan. Parikshit is obviously very keen to listen. It's the right combination coming together. Therefore, Sukha says, do not worry, I'm here to help you. And therefore, the first part of Shuka's sermon to Parikshit begins. Obviously, Shuka has to prepare Parikshit, so he starts with the hard lessons. He starts with an exposition on Ashtanga Yoga. In the process of explaining the importance of Krishna Dhyana, of how to do Dhyana on Narayana, Shuka introduces the process of Ashtanga Yoga to Parikshit, because he just recounted to him the incident of Katwanga, where Katwanga, knowing that one muhurta, immediately sat down in Padmasana and immediately went into a state of dhyana, samadhi, reached moksha. Now, Sukha is going to talk about the importance of dhyana, of meditation on Bhagavan. Many times, meditation gets trivialized. Meditation is also a big industry today. And there are a lot of people who are making good money on selling various meditation packages. The meditation, and many times we wonder why sometimes it is easy, sometimes it is not so easy to start to get into a meditative state as well. Now, the problem here is most of the packaged meditation, the modern meditation packages are selling us the ceiling of a building without the walls and the foundation. Imagine walking into a structure which has only the ceiling, no walls, no pillars, no foundation. Obviously, that ceiling is going to collapse sooner or later. Many a times we attempt to get into quote unquote serious meditation without really knowing that meditation is a state which has several steps that has as its prerequisite. In fact, the quality of meditation depends on our own way of life and living. Many times we don't realize that. If we lead our lives and living on our own terms, driven by the world, and if we continue to struggle to meditate, we will not succeed. If there is no change in the lifestyle, if there is no change in the way we live, and there is no change in the way we lead our life and living, meditation definitely is more than formidable. So straight away, the context of explaining how to meditate on Bhagavan Hari, Shukha says, it is very important to understand that it is a process. There are several parts to it, and all parts have to fall in place. Also, yoga, which is also becoming very popular. When we say yoga, many times we start equating yoga with only the physical exercises that we do, which again is a very limited part, which possibly could be helpful purely from physical well-being, but does not take into account the holistic well-being. Shukha talks about the process of Ashtanga Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pratyahara, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and eventually Samadhi. Yama and Niyama are something which dictate, rule, govern the way we lead our life. They form the moral code of conduct that governs our lives. If this is not properly taken care of, it's like the foundation. Then the pillars and the walls are all shaking all the time. We don't need to be too much worried about the terms themselves. When we really break it down and see, these are really simple truths. Yama is all about social ethics, the way we have to deal with others and the world. Niyama is all about personal ethics, the way we have to deal with ourselves. So fundamentally, if we go wrong here, if I am selfish and immersed in selfishness, there is no way I can successfully meditate. It is as simple as that. If I am driven by greed, I am counting money all the time, how can I have Krishna Dhyana? I will only have dollar Dhyana, no Krishna Dhyana. So therefore, my social ethics and my personal ethics, now we can easily relate when we use simple terms that, but unfortunately they may seem simple, but not very, very, very simple to follow. Because when we say the moment Yama, that these are restraints, things not to do. Yama are things to do. We do exactly the opposite. When Shastras say things not to do, we end up doing them. We clearly follow the list. The only thing is we got it wrong. The headings go wrong. Things not to do, things to do, things not to do. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Aparigraha, Brahmacharya. Things, therefore, ahimsa, himsa, not to do. Now, ahimsa, aparigraha, asteya, brahmacharya, these are all, they all come under yama, restraints. Non-violence, at the level of word, at the level of speech, word, at the level of speech, thought, and action. Brahmacharya is direct meaning is celibacy, but a grihastha can also be a brahmachari. Because brahmacharya is not just celibacy. Brahmacharya has to do with moderation in everything, regulation, balance, satya, truthfulness, aparigraha, non-possessory attitude, astheya, not stealing what does not belong to me. If we start analyzing this, we become a little uncomfortable with all of these. But these are, and on the other hand, niyama are personal observances. The way we govern ourselves. Shaucha, santosha, tapaha, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. Purity, physical, mental, austerity, tapaha, santosha, contentment, ishvara pranidhana is devotion, complete surrender. Now, these all are the codes of conduct that govern the way we live, lead our lives. When many of these pieces of the puzzle fall in place, and combined with that, Shuka says one needs to look at pranayama. Abhyasen manasa shuddham trivid brahmaksharam param mano yache jitasvasaha brahma bijam avishwaram, says. He gives the formula for pranayama, similar to what Krishna gives in the Gita. Apane juhvati pranam prana prane tatapare pranapana rudva pranapana rudva pranayama parayanaha, he says. Puraka, Rechaka, Kumbhaka, inhalation, exhalation, and holding the breath. Now, not to be just done as a machine. While these breathing exercises are going on, when it is being regulated, the mind needs to be properly rooted. And for that, need to be properly anchored. For that, Shuka says, begin with the Brahma Bija, the Omkara mantra, Omkara. And that is the beginning point, because Omkara is a great purifier. Omkara is a great purifier, and also it calms the mind, it strengthens the mind. With the right way of life and living, with the code of conduct laid down, part of Yama, Niyama, and progressing to pranayama, he says, then one needs to observe and practice pratyahara and dharana. Niyache vishayebhyo akshan manasa buddhi saratihi manah karmabhir akshiptam shubhate dharayedhya. No, Shuka obviously is very unique. He has this unique capability of condensing what should be conveyed in multiple sentences. Very profound words which are soaked with a lot of messages. He says, Niyached Vishayebhyo Akshan Manasa Buddhi Sarati. This is he talking about Pratyahara. How do I control and master my senses? He says, the only way to do that is to get your hierarchy right. Now, in the factory of life, the senses are the workers. The mind is the supervisor. The intellect is the decision maker. But unfortunately, the way we operate our lives, we get the hierarchy wrong completely. The senses become the decision maker. The mind just goes along and does whatever the senses ask, and intellect is completely asleep. So essentially, Pratyahara is about getting the hierarchy right. The senses need to be supervised by the mind. The mind, which needs to be then supported by the intellect, which has to take the decisions, help the mind when it comes to reining in the senses. Thus, senses can be restrained, controlled, and eventually mastered. But what is the purpose of doing this, one may ask? This is where he moves on to the next step. Why should we do this? Take this trouble. He moves on to the next step of dharana. He says, Manaha karmabhirakshiptam shubharte dharayedhya. This is where dharana, focus, concentration comes in. Dharana on what is a bigger question we'll come to. But first and foremost, we need to understand that concentration, bringing the mind to concentrate, is crucial. Now, we may all say that we all know this. Focus, concentration, obviously are very important. The more we concentrate, the more we get things done. But whether we like it or not, we all end up training our mind not for concentration, but only for distraction. Knowingly and unknowingly, we keep training our mind very diligently. Training our mind for distraction and not for concentration. Why do I say that? Every time we rush to open up a message, to not to miss out earth-shattering WhatsApp forwards that keep coming, knowing fully well that this is the 100th time the same message is being circulated, but we cannot control the urge to open the message, even wherever we are. Every time we do that, we are actually training the mind for distraction, successfully being distracted all the time. The more the number of times we do that, every time we respond to that unique sound we have set for different kinds of messages coming from different kinds of people. Every time we react to that, we are basically telling the mind, this is the way you need to behave. This is the way you need to stay distracted all the time. If we actually see day to day, how many number of hours we are actually training the mind for concentration, and how many number of hours we are training the mind for distraction. We are not consciously spending enough time to bring the mind to a focus. Unfortunately, today's children also use digital media for studies, and we know how pop-ups are very, very popular. And now you have everything on the same screen. One screen you have WhatsApp, one screen you have Instagram, one screen you have Facebook, another screen you have, the ticker, ICC ticker, where the scores are coming in. Heart attack when the class is going on. The mind is being very beautifully distracted. We are training the mind to remain distracted all the time. How can we expect any amount of concentration or focus? It has become a challenge today, whether we like it or not, because of loss of real book reading, paper book reading. I'm not even talking about digital media, because digital, unfortunately, because of all these distractions, to sit and read 100 pages at one shot is a big ask today, irrespective of the age group. That is the state of the level of Dharana Shakti that we have today. Now, Shukha is essentially here saying, therefore, what Shukha is here saying, unless that focus is brought in, and what is important here is to know that the focus, dharana, the concentration is not on anything and everything. We can keep concentrating on many things. At best, they may pacify us. But what we need to concentrate on must not just pacify us, they must also purify us. because I can take a flower, beautiful flower, and keep focusing on that. I may draw, I may put on a board one dot, and keep focusing on that. Yes, I will grow my concentration power. That may pacify me. That may be better than looking at a laddu, because that will trigger my desire to consume it. So that is not pacifying. While that is better, it is not enough. So Shukha is very clear here. Dharana on what? Dharana, Bhagavan Vishnu. He is not only the pacifier, he is also the purifier. And only through this, then one can move on to dhyana and samadhi. Tatreka vayavam dhyayet avyuchinnena chetasa mano nirvishayam yuktva tatah kinchana smaret padam tat paramam vishnoho mano yatra prashidati, he says. How to do now dhyana of Bhagavan? Now, again, Shukha gives a beautiful process. How do I practice dhyana? He says, Bhagavad dhyana has to happen by relishing each and every feature, divine feature of Bhagavan. He says, Tatraika avyayam dhyayet avyuchinnena chetasa. While looking at this glorious Divya Mangala Vigraha of Bhagavan, looking at the beautiful form of Krishna, he says dhyana will be effective when one starts to relish every little divine feature of Bhagavan. One needs to start experiencing his form, his divine feature. The great Kuresha, illustrious disciple of Swami Ramanuja, in his Varadarada Stavam, beautifully declares, he says, Twam Udarabhujam Unnasam Ayat Karanapasha Parikrama Sadamsam Ayataksham Abhijata Kapolam Ayataksham Abhijata Kapolam Paraniyat Varapradadrangme Neelamegariva Manjana Punja Shama Kuntala Mananta Swayantvam Abjapani Padam Ambuja Netra Netrasat Guru Karisha Sadame. He says, he teaches us how to experience Bhagavan when we do dhyana. Udara Bhujam, looking at his resplendent hands, so very delicate, but they are Udara Bhujam. They only give. They keep giving. Even if we don't ask, they keep giving generously. Unnasam, beautiful and majestic nose. Karanapasha Parikrama Sadamsam, long ears themselves without any ornaments are like Abharana for you. Ayataksham, broad, long, bewitching eyes that they go all the way up to the ears. Abhijata Kapolam, always smiling cheeks. Neelameganibham, a divine hue, rain-bearing cloud, dark bluish rain-bearing cloud. Anjana Punja Shama Kuntala. Krishna has curly locks of hair. It seems they look like dense forests of colorium. The colorium that's applied to the eyes, very dark. And he says, Sada Netrasat Kuru, give me the eyes to always only see you and see you only. Kuresha, incidentally, when he was singing this, when he declared this, he was blind. He wanted his eyes only to see Bhagavan and his glorious form. Here, Shukha is basically saying dhyana has to be done by experiencing the divine form, soaking in every minute detail. And it is in that process of dhyana one reaches samadhi, where the mind is filled with Krishna and nothing else. He also says practice of this concentration on Bhagavan, which leads to dhyana, also helps by cleaning up the mind, preparing for Bhagavan to completely take over. He says, Rajastamobhyam akshiptam vimudham mana atmanaha yachet dharanaya dhiraha hantiya tat kritam malam. All the malam, the dirt in the mind. The only way to clean up this dirt, we can keep do scrubbing forever. No amount of scrubbing is going to remove all this dirt. The only way is somehow invite Krishna. Once he is in, slowly and steadily, the cleansing will happen. It is like dharana, the process for dhyana is like, basically using a torchlight in a dark place. Torchlight to focus on what we want. It's like there could be dirt everywhere. But the moment you take this torchlight and put the flash on one particular point where you want. So focus, bring that focus on Krishna. There could be still dirt in the mind. It is not possible to do total cleansing on day one. The kind of vasanas that we have been carrying for ages, it is beyond us to even hope that all the mala, the dirt, will completely go. But what is required is to use dharana to bring the torchlight, the focus on Krishna in the mind. And when that happens, he takes over after that. Then once we start the dhyana on him, slowly and steadily, the cleansing process begins. So therefore here, Sukha says, the yogi who goes through this process of dharana and dhyana, he achieves his goal. He achieves his goal of experiencing Krishna. He says, Yasyam sandharyamanayam yogino bhakti lakshanaha ashu sampadyate yogaha ashrayam bhadram ikshataha. Therefore, we all know that we need to keep watching out our mind. The best way to watch the mind is by having something better to watch. Keep watching Krishna, because as long as we keep watching him, everything else will be taken care. Then it is a smooth process, no struggles. From a state of maximum effort, slowly we will reach a state of effortlessness. But we need to be patient. We can't hope like Katwanga, in one muhurta we can sit, reach the state of samadhi and then go for moksha. That's not going to happen. It took Katwanga hundreds of years to reach the stage. But what is reassuring for us is there is a very clear-cut process, and this is what Shuka explains. Now, he may also be bewildered. Ashtanga Yoga possibly is not for ordinary mortals like us. Don't need to worry. Shuka has an answer for that also. We need to be patient to wait for a few more sessions to get that answer. Until then, let us continue to contemplate on that glorious form of Krishna and continue to meditate on him. And we will continue with the glorious conversation between Shuka and Parikshit in our next session. Sarvam Krishna.